Hi, I'm Reverend Zach.
And I'm just regular Matt.
And welcome to This Movie is a Hot Dog, a podcast where me and a friend of mine, Matthew, watch a bad movie, critically, financially, or otherwise. Then we review it, break it down, and tell you what we think. Hello, Matthew.
Why are you Reverend Zach?
Well, I was going to say, you may be wondering why I said I was Reverend Zach. Because I went through the arduous, painstaking process of becoming an ordained online minister in about 2 minutes.
Well... What were your grades like in minister school? How did your minister degree turn out?
Well, I can't tell you how they were, but I can tell you the application process was your first and last name, your email address. They asked you if you were over 13 years old. That was it. Like, and that's not a joke. That was the end of the thing. They said, "Are you over 13?" And I'm like, "So can a 13-year-old be a minister?"
Is there a law in the books with that minimum age, or?
I don't know why it was that age, which seems super duper young to me. But I can now legally perform marriages, funerals, and baptisms in like 48 states. But enough about me and my newfound career. What movie did we watch? What the fuck did we watch?
Come on, you're almost there.
Space Jail. Space
Good
Jail.
job.
No, that's not even the name of the movie. That's just what we've been calling it. We watched 2012's Lockout, directed by Luc Besson. And Matt, I know we already talked about this, but we're seeming unending spiral of doing foreign films. This is a French movie. And
we tried to get out of it because this seemed like the most American movie possible, and still we failed.
And I think that explains some of the problems we have with it, which you can get into your idea later. But we call this, first of all, I forgot the name of it because we've just been calling this movie Space Jail. The official title is Lockout, one word, but it is set in a jail in space. So it's Space Jail, or like Rocket Prison.
Or Rocket Prison, or any combination of just things that shouldn't exist for no reason, like the budget and everything, and it's just awful.
So we'll go into the movie, but just to sort of set, like, there's no reason to, like, explain the plot in depth, so here's, like, 2-sentence the plot. It's 2079, there is a space jail where we send the worst criminals. It's essentially the plot of Escape from New York, people who have seen Escape from New York. The president's daughter is on this isolated prison. They take this super secret agent guy who is Guy Pearce named Snow, which is so close to Snake, I don't even know why they bothered calling him anything else but Snake. And they send him there, and he has to go get the president's daughter, and that's the movie. And he does. Spoiler alert.
Oh, this entire show is a spoiler alert. Why do you even bother?
But the first thing we see is Guy Pearce getting punched in the face.
He's in an interrogation room. There's 2 guys there, and one of them has the lovely title of just being face puncher. And, you know, like cops can now, and definitely will in the future with the way civil rights are going, because it's totally regressing like that. This guy takes like 10 cracks to the face that, like, at that point, pro fighters would be dropped. But because he's not a human being, he's just a quip machine. He just, every time you press his face button, he spits out another useless line, probably because of the brain damage that they've given him at this point.
Well, like, I don't think you really did it justice in describing it. Like, not the punching you got down. I'm talking about Guy Pearce's dialogue. Guy Pearce doesn't speak in anything but, like, pithy one-liners. And that's not an exaggeration. Matt, am I using hyperbole at all?
He has, like, every opportunity he gets to have a genuine connection, or even small talk, with another human being, he instead replaces with some kind of mom joke or some
like
kind
of sarcastic dig.
And just useless. Like, this is this is someone to whom conversation just doesn't reach any part of his frontal cortex. There's some kind of severed link.
He actually doesn't, like, convey any information in what he says. Like, he never...
At all, ever. He never verbally communicates.
Oh, and I didn't even think of this. He converses so little with actual dialogue giving people information that when he's getting interrogated, he writes something in sugar on the table. And that is part of the information that moves the plot along. He doesn't even say that because he's too busy going like, well, last night when your wife's dick was, when your wife's dick, Jesus, where was that going?
You know what? He might as well have said that.
Last night when your wife's dick was fucking you, burp dirt. But that's what he says, basically.
Yeah, it really is. Like, I was completely ready to let you go with that. In fact, that like later on, when he a necessity calls for him to dye the president daughter's hair, she asks what's in a cup of his that he's holding, and he's like, oh, some motor oil and some toilet water and some stuff I found. Like, I thought he was just being him and continuing to quip. And when it actually turned out to be that stuff, like, I was like, what?
I'm not entirely sure he didn't just say those things.
Right?
Like,
yeah, at this point, like, he's got the ultimate poker face because I'm not sure he himself even knows what's going on or can be trusted with anything he says.
Well, it's like, for people listening, which from our numbers is no one, when you and me talk, like, we will say a bunch of, me and Matt text each other all the time, and we say a lot of really stupid things. And sometimes Matt will tell me something that is just an experience that's happening to him that's sort of, like, interesting, and he wants to tell me about it. And a lot of the times, I text back to him, I'm like, I can't tell if you're joking right now. And I feel the same way with Guy Pearce, where he's like, I got this motor oil and spit and this and that and coffee grounds in this cup. She should be like, are you actually, is that what's in there? Like, what is it? I don't know. I can't take you seriously anymore.
What is it? And then if she did ask that, he probably would have just responded, it's pure cyanide, and then just put it on her head.
Right, exactly.
Like, that's all she would have gotten for that.
Like, all she gets from him, she gets two things. Like, he goes to space prison, rescues the president's daughter. People, it's full of psychopaths. People with axes and fucking shivs, and they're just killing people and cutting people up. And he's never like, keep your voice down, follow me, I'm working with the government, I'm here to rescue you, blah, blah, blah. He's just like, oh, how's it going there, baby? Why don't you get me a beer? Or he punches her in the face.
He only did that once. But shall we get right down into...
the nitty-gritty?
The nitty-gritty of Spokane Jail?
Take us away.
Okay. We open on him just getting bashed in the face by these interrogators, and we slowly kind of figure out why he's been arrested. It keeps going flashbacks to kind of an opening fight in a hotel room between him... Yeah?
I was just going to say, do you just want to skip over that? Lord knows the movie does.
Okay, you're right. we probably should. Guy does things, gets arrested, and is told he's going to space jail.
Essentially, like, there is a whole real 40-second synopsis. There's this whole backstory about how he worked for the CIA, and there was some drug deal, and there was a briefcase
Nuclear
he needed.
Secrets.
Something, and his, like, partner or somebody gets shot, and he's framed for it, blah, blah, blah. Nothing to do with the movie. They bring it up at the end, and then it explains nothing.
Yeah, so in the end, a suitcase full of MacGuffins goes disappearing, and he's blamed for it and gets sentenced to space jail, where the worst of the worst go.
Bum, bum, bum!
And so, the conditions in space jail are explained to us by the warden of space jail when the president's daughter arrives. It's an idyllic prison if you're a guard, because there's no riots, there's no abuse, there's no anything, because everyone on it is unconscious. And the entire premise of sentencing in space jail is you are just put into a chemical coma for the duration of your sentence, and then you wake up having had no time to learn a lesson or get any kind of recuperation from your sentencing, and then
I
you will
was
return
gonna
to
say-
society and continue to murder people.
I was going to say, this is where, like, this movie's basic understanding of not what prisons are, but why we have prisons.
Why prisons are...
Why prisons are? They're just like, oh, you just lock people up and then they're not your problem anymore, right? It's like, no, we're supposed to send them there so that when they come out, they're rehabilitated and they don't want to kill people anymore, do drugs or whatever it is. But in this movie, we put the worst of the worst, the people who are insane, we lock them up at their most insane for 30 years so they haven't aged, open them back up to where they are just as insane as when they left and go like, well, your 30 years are up, go back to Earth. What does that solve?
And, by the way, bonus points, it turns out they're not just as insane as they were when they went in. They're more insane. Because
That's right.
this chemical coma process has been proven to drive people crazy.
And that's the whole reason the president's daughter's up there, because she's on a humanitarian thing saying that, like, you put these people in there and they're not really asleep, like they're awake, so they get, like, space crazy, or in some cases, like, space Alzheimer's.
It's hard to say. Like, they either get dementia, it's said, or they're supposed to it's because every character up there is different and there's no consistency at all.
No, but that's the thing, though. Like, there's no consistency in what she's worried about. Like, one guy comes out, and he is out of his fucking mind. Like, he is bonkers. And then another guy comes out, and he is, like, a retard. Like, he doesn't know his own name, stupid. Like, it's like, well, does this stuff make you stupid, or does it make you crazy? Because if it makes you stupid, well, then I think it's fine, then, whatever. Like, I mean, yeah, their families and blah, 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 everyone's sad. But it's better than literally making a crazy person factory.
Yeah, jail. And so, let's see. I had a lot of notes for that beginning thing, but now that we've skipped it, and I'm glad we did. So, but we did skip over one of the dumbest transition lines I've ever heard. When they reference where the president's daughter is, they ask the president, like, is she even in Washington? And the response is, well, not exactly.
Oh, yeah, hold on. I have a note about that. Hold on, I have to find it. Which applies to this.
Well, in the end, I'm sure what you're about to say is, what you mean is, no, she's in space.
The president is having his blood tested for some reason? Like,
So,
that's never...
I think it's mostly used as a thing to explain the medical devices. We learn here that the president and all of the first family have medical devices inserted into them that automatically monitor their life signs. And this is used as a MacGuffin several times in the movie.
Okay. So she goes on the spaceship, and the warden's telling her all this, like, oh, the prisoners, they're in stasis so they can't hurt each other, and we have a record of, nobody hurting. Nobody ever goes like, and I feel like this is a given, nobody ever goes like, this prison is inescapable. You can't escape this prison. That should be a huge selling point.
But it's just hanging in the air.
No one ever brings it up, though. Also, I feel like there are a lot of things in this movie, like, especially when the Space Police Air Force show up later.
If we're going to get to them, we have to do them all at once.
Well, we're not going to get to them right now, but I feel like that gets to one of my favorite lines of Matt about movies. In the future, everything is needlessly cool.
Yep.
Everything is needlessly cool beyond, like, its purpose or, like, practicality. Like, it's
and
just...
especially beyond cost.
Cost and, like, well... We don't have that now because we don't need it. Why would we need it then? Because it's the future, and the future's cool.
That axiom has held up to almost every movie we've ever watched that was sci-fi.
It's so true, because they're just like, oh, look at our phones, and somebody's, like, eyeball explodes into, like, a hologram, and you're like, why is that necessary?
Oh, God.
And you're like, because it's the future. Here's the next stupid thing that happens in the plot of the movie.
Let's continue from Warden introducing her to space jail.
Right. So he tells her, this prison city, the art, blah, 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 it holds 500 people. And he takes her into the general population where it's just pods of people frozen. They walk into a room. There's like 5,000 people in this place. Like thousands of bodies.
Yeah, it looks like the scene in The Matrix with all just the tubes in the city. And so you think like, oh my God, they've locked up all of Detroit. And then when he gives the actual population, it's like 500 people, and that I feel would cover just the first row of pods. And it looks like there's layers of them.
Oh, layers and layers, and it's one of those scenes where they show a hallway, and the hallway is so long you can't see the end of it.
Yeah, it just
like,
and from the outside as well, it just looks like a massive facility. And why not? Because everyone's just kept in cold storage. You don't need like a yard or a cafeteria or anything.
Well, this goes into the other thing about like prisons nowadays and what they don't understand. Like, prisons are going bankrupt now, and we can barely keep prisons open. This space jail must cost like $11 trillion.
This, like, a tenth of this facility would bankrupt Europe.
Like, all the money, like, God knows how much, just metal alone. And the years to build it, like, to pay these people. Are, like, the guards getting paid, like, a standard, like, $15 an hour? Or are they getting paid, like, space wages? Like, what?
It's ridiculous in that, like, all of it just reflects a lack of thought, and it's just, like, just accept space jail. Like, I feel like
Right.
The writer is just looking you in the eye and imploring, going, like, just, come on, just believe this.
Space jail.
Come on.
Are you listening to Guy Pearce? Isn't he smarmy? Isn't that charming? He's so smarmy. Like,
and look at the president's daughter. She's kind of cute, right?
I don't even think she is. She's got a big face, like a long
She's got
face.
a big face.
She does.
Her
She's
face
got
is too big. I don't like my face is big.
Her face looks like when you like a dinner roll that hasn't been baked yet. Like, it looks like if I like poked my finger into her cheek, it would just depress and stay that way.
Maybe it would. Maybe that's an attractive
that would be gross. Like, shit goes bad immediately. She gets in there, they wake up the craziest person in the prison, which is like the worst thing if you're trying to sell your prison to the government.
Which is especially true because, like, so they wake him up, and later on when people escape, because spoiler alert, they escape, it seems like he is a complete minority of absolutely insane people in the prison. Because for the most part, like, there's at least a significant number of people with level heads.
Yeah, and this guy, yeah, no, you're right. There is a decent number of people who are like, as soon as they get out, they're like, we have to take control of this. We have to like get hostages, and we're gonna get out of here. This guy just wants to just be crazy,
Murder.
Just be murderer.
That is his goal. His goal is to be crazy murder.
And he does it very well.
And so, yeah, so the way he escapes, which is just so dumb, is the president's daughter brought a detail of Secret Service people with her. And as they enter the prisoner section of the prison, the warden goes like, all right, we need all guns checked in here. We don't want any guns over there, just on the off chance that a prisoner gets one. Makes sense. But, you know, Secret Service guy is like, that rule doesn't apply to me. So he goes on in with his backup weapon after yielding his main sidearm.
And what the guard warns him while we have this policy in place is exactly what happens. The crazy guy gets his gun.
In the dumbest way, though, because even worse, like, so the president's daughter is interviewing the prisoner from the other side of bulletproof glass.
Why
with one
is
of
he
her
over
guards with her, and the other one is in the room with the prisoner.
Why?
And that...
Why is he over there?
Like, no prison would be like, yep, you know what we need? We need a outside security guy to be in the room with this prisoner. Because then, science.
I mean, it makes no fucking sense. He's over there. It's like, why aren't you with the president's daughter? And the guy...
Aren't you the reason, like, aren't you supposed to protect her? Can't you do that best from next to her?
And it's not even like a fight breaks out and he shambles for the gun and gets it. Like, he reaches down, picks up the guy's gun, and shoots him. That's it. He uses none of his CIA training to stop that. The guy just reaches down, he goes, hey, you got a gun, picks it up and shoots him.
Yeah, just, oh, by the way, this is mine now.
And so...
And between him, and after he shoots him, though, like, he is just apparently Mr. Unstoppable. No one in the entire prison is trained to use firearms against another firearm, apparently.
Well, think about it. None of these guards have had to do anything for months. All these prisoners are frozen. all these prisoners are frozen. They don't have to even really clock into work.
So yeah, they probably all just turned into like citizens of Wall-E.
Probably not that bad, but just like, oh my God, something's happening. Like, should we call? Like, oh, I guess that's our job. Like,
who do we? We have to.
I was about to say, should we call the police? And you would think that's a stupid line, but the literal next scene, like, because as soon as he escapes, an alarm goes off. Cut to the LOPD, which is the Low Orbit Police Department, which implies beyond just the prison, they have to stop space crimes?
Yeah, there's because like a police department is a civil thing that's like, used for lots of populations to resolve disputes and stuff like that. Like we only see space jail in orbit. There's not like a competing set of stations that are like out there that might occasionally have disputes or anything like that. No, there is a police department which is just as large and complex as space jail, with what seems like an endless fleet of high maneuverability orbit vehicles.
Space jets. They're space jets.
Yeah, they're space like F-14s, and like they are just, I don't even know. Like space jail alone would cost all of the country's money. And then the space police, whose job seems to only be to monitor space jail, which they are just terrible at, also is just costing all of the money. And for what?
But I think the implication of what is taking place because the Low Orbit Police Department is there is that there is this like barrage of space crime happening in low orbit around the Earth, which is a much more interesting movie.
Right? Like just rogue space pirates going nuts.
Like just a cop movie in space around Earth. I mean,
so just a buddy cop movie.
Yeah, I mean the
options
for
out there.
The options for needlessly cool like cop technology is out the window in Space Crime, the movie.
Yeah, you could go just full Men in Black in space.
It would be insane, but like the space cops do absolutely nothing in this movie except get murdered by the hundreds.
So after the craziest guy on the station is woken up and manages to acquire a gun, he shoots his way through bulkheads, which by their very definition should just be impenetrable. And he works his way down to the control room, which is unguarded and manned by one person. Now, I've been to a nuclear power plant recently, very fun tour. Their control room is never manned by less than like 10 people because they are constantly shutting down and transferring power around certain areas of the station while they do maintenance, because anything that complex is constantly under maintenance. And the same thing would be with space jail. They would constantly be like shutting down pipes to fix leaks or checking air pressure in different areas because you've got all the complications of a power plant, of something, of a pressurized, self-contained environment, of, a sewage treatment plant, of a water plant. All of that has to be controlled. And again, there is just one confused guy in a lab coat, and he obviously is just fodder. In fact, everybody in this movie is just fodder. If you aren't wearing a prison jumpsuit, you are going to be shot by someone in a prison jumpsuit. And if you are wearing a prison jumpsuit, you are going to be shot by one of anyone. And
It's also good to know that in 2079 or whatever this movie is, when we have a giant space jail and space police, we're still just issuing our guards, where all the prisoners are never awake, have revolvers.
Revolvers, because that is the most efficient way of propelling force.
And in space, by the way. And when like shit goes down, there's never like a okay, don't shoot unless don't shoot. We're just gonna call their bluff because if we shoot, we'll crack the something or breach the hull. No, there are gunfights immediately. They just start firing openly like the classic, like, I'm just shooting behind me while I'm running and not looking what I'm shooting at, which seems like the worst thing to do in a fucking space station.
Where the glass has proven to never be bulletproof. And so, yeah, there's just a complete heedless gunfire all the time. And by the way, just overall, weapons technology in this universe has not advanced even slightly. People are just walking around with pistols and shotguns, basic ballistic weapons. And one of the biggest things that bothered me...
In some cases, it goes backwards.
In some cases, it goes backwards, which we'll get to. So, as the guy makes his way to the control room, he releases all the prisoners. And so the prisoners kind of swarm out. They make their way through everything, killing everyone. Pretty fun to watch. But so space cops are called. And so the space cops come, and the space cops are going to send in a team. Like, they can't obviously retake the prison with just a small team of guys. So the person who assumes the leadership role amongst the prisoners, which oddly enough isn't the craziest person, he says, like, let them on, we'll negotiate them, like, they'll have a hostage negotiator, and we'll get this process going. Like, we've got some hostages, we've got some bargaining chips, we're in a pretty good position of power. But the crazy guy in space, which is a good place to be in a position of power. And so the craziest guy goes, fuck that, I'm going to activate the station's automated external cannons, which it has because science.
Also implying that there are, like, raids on this prison with other spaceships?
Which just further proves that in this universe, like, space piracy is just a huge deal, that this thing needs to defend itself, because the only places that have, like, space travel are superpowers. Like, they don't, like, entire countries, it takes the resource of a country to maintain a space program. And these people are worried, like, oh, your average, like, African pirate is just going to come up there and do what? Steal prisoners?
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. This movie is so stupid.
It, like, nothing makes sense. But so the station,
they weren't, like, clearly they weren't even thinking about what they were making while they were making it. They were just like, oh yeah, and then there's like space police, and then they're gonna have, like, space guns, and then there'll be, like, a space jet fight. They never were like, well, but in the context of this universe and the story,
why?
Right, exactly. They never asked why. They just did it.
Yeah, and that was clearly also the rules for writing the dialogue. Like, oh, and then he'll make another "your mom" joke. But like, but is he ever going to address any of the questions that she asks him? No, that's dumb.
Do you want to explain your theory about why he only talks in one-liners not only does he talk in one-liners, but they make Guy Pearce's character to be, like, the coolest guy. Like, I was waiting for him to, like, do something and somebody, like, turn around and go, like, wow, that was pretty cool, wasn't it, you guys? Like, they make him out to be the coolest guy to the point where he smokes. Now, in 2014, smoking is at an all-time low, and it gets lower every day because nobody smokes anymore. In 2079... I can only imagine that smoking is on the verge, if not already, essentially illegal. And he smokes in buildings. Like, no one, he pulls out a cigarette and starts smoking, and no one's like, what the fuck are you doing? You haven't been able to smoke inside for 70 years. But he starts smoking, and somebody's like, you know what? You're just such a badass. Nobody smokes anymore, and you're the only one who smokes. And I'm like, is this movie, like, I think this movie's trying to make smoking cool.
They're trying.
But, like, please explain your theory of why he talks like this.
I will leave all of his characterization to you. Please continue going on with what makes him him.
Well, your theory was, and I agree with this completely, was Luc Besson was making who made Taken, by the way. This is from the same guy who made Taken, where they went, we're going to make an old-timey 80s action movie, and we need them to be cool, and we want it to be really American. And so they're French, so they, like, kind of get it, but not really. So they're just like, oh, well, why was, like, Bruce Willis in Die Hard's so cool? It's like, oh, because he said cool things. And so I feel like when they were writing his character down, they got so carried away with that the only lines they wrote for him were these one-liners, and then when it came time to make the movie, that's all they had. Everybody else had, like, characterization and, like, you know, like, plot progression, and he just had 80 lines of him just going like, well, you know, that's what happens, it's another day in space, or whatever.
I can't even remember any of them in particular because they all just, like, eventually they all just wash over you.
When everything's a one-liner, nothing is a one-liner. They all just bleed together. It's not like he says one thing like, yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, and you're like, ooh, that was cool because he snuck away and then he killed somebody. Like, it's all he says. Like, to the point when somebody's like, why, are you here to rescue me? And he's like, well, I'm not here to take you on a date. And she's like, well, you did, like, so are you, though? Like...
So, there's a lot of prisoners out here, and I'm not sure who to trust, so can you give me a hint?
Like, and I feel like she only figures out he's there to save her through, like, context clues.
He's just gradually dropping hints, and then she has to figure out whether or not he's going to save her or just kill her.
Like, he breaks her out of a thing, and she's like, are you here to save me? And he just says something. And then, a convict comes in there to kill them, and he kills him. And she's like, okay, well, I guess you're on my side. And he's like, well, I'm not the mailman. And he's like, come on. And then she sees like, and then she sees like a plan where it's like, here's how to get the president's daughter out. And she's like, oh, okay, I guess you are that, but whatever. Like, because he never tells her.
Because he doesn't tell anyone anything.
He doesn't tell anybody anything. In the beginning, when he's getting interrogated, he doesn't even, like, he doesn't tell them, like, wrong information or right information. He doesn't tell them information. I don't even, like, this is where I started to get into my theory, like, I think this guy has, like, a mental disorder.
He does.
Like, I think he might be, like, on the spectrum of, like, autism. Like, he gets caught, and he's just so nervous he doesn't know how to interact, so he just starts saying things, and people are just, like, feel bad for him?
Yep, that's the entire premise of the movie. It's just left to be.
Hold on, a big spider's crawling down to my laptop with a web.
Well,
I got it. I got it. I killed him.
Okay, so while you mourn that loss, so one of the things that I wanted to talk about, and I had some notes on this, is like the particulars of the cost. So we talk about like it's so big, it's so expensive, this doesn't make sense. But there's actually some interesting stuff that I have here. So right now, NASA says that it costs about $10,000 a pound to send something into space.
And this thing weighs roughly the size of the moon.
And yeah, it's basically a moon-sized station. Not quite, but like it's probably at least as big as an aircraft carrier, I would argue.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough.
And an aircraft carrier holds like 3,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, it costs about $10,000 now to send something into space, and NASA's goal is to get it down to $1,000 a pound. So it's the future. So let's pretend, and we're going to have to pretend pretty hard, that it's $100 a pound to get something into space in the space future.
Right.
That means that every chicken dinner, every set of steel bars, all of the initial oxygen and water supply, all of the hull, all of everything had to get up there somehow and escape the crippling grip of gravity at the cost of $100 a pound. So recently, like, there's also been stuff published of like, oh, Guantanamo Bay spent $1 million making a soccer field for its prisoners. And it's like, well, they spent $1 million because they had to import everything because we literally buy nothing from Cuba.
Right.
So now, instead of just having to ship in, you know, turf and other stuff, you have to ship in food and air.
So, please tell me you've got like a rough estimate of how much this costs.
You know what? Let's do that real fast. Okay, let's Google the weight of an aircraft carrier just as a premise for... Okay. What's the largest class of aircraft carrier? Is it like Reagan class or something like that, or is that submarines?
Well, obviously it's Reagan class because I have no idea. My brother was in the Navy, not me. I don't know. So while Matt's looking up the weight of an aircraft carrier, where we left off now basically are like the space police can't get in because the space turrets shot them down with space bullets, and the effects in this movie in terms of like CGI are dog shit. Like everything looks absolutely terrible. Like in the beginning, in the whole subplot we skipped about he's getting arrested. He has this, chase scene where he gets on, a future motorcycle, and he's being chased by, hovercrafts that are just firing machine guns. It looks like a fucking PlayStation 1 game for no reason. It's just guys in buildings, and then all of a sudden it's like, whoa, wait a second, what the fuck happened? And the space jet fight isn't any better. Do you agree with that? With
the space jet fight, it's also wide angle that they kind of get away with it. It's not as obvious because the background is like the dark abyss of space versus a city.
But the city part was gross.
The city part, it looked like the part in The Matrix where Neo pulls the pole out of the ground and is fighting the Agent Smiths, and suddenly we're in an N64 game.
Yeah, it was bad. So they destroy all the space fighters from the space police, and this is when they tell the president that his daughter's up there, and that's when they go to Snow, and they give him a chance to save the president's daughter for a pardon. And from here on out, this movie is Escape from New York beat for beat. They don't even try. I think they just found the transcript for the Escape from New York script and just changed the names a little bit.
A little bit, not too much.
I mean, SN, you're halfway to Snake at that point. The other thing about this movie at this point is this movie has terrible pacing in terms of, when all this takes place. Because this is the second time I've watched this movie. The first time I watched this movie, it makes it seem like all the events take place in, 3 hours, 3 to 4 hours. But the more you watch it, the more you're like, wait a minute. This should be months, because a friend of his is imprisoned in the space jail, and he gets arrested in the beginning of the movie. So, he would have to get arrested, go to the police department, get a lawyer, get a trial date, get out on bail, go to court, get a jury selected, go through the whole courtroom process, get sentenced, and then get sent to space jail. That should take 9 months. But it looks like they arrested him and just threw him in a rocket ship.
It seems like it happened that afternoon.
They just went, oh, we're arresting you, and threw him in a rocket ship and sent him to space jail. So, the whole time he's in space jail, this stuff is happening on the outside that's wait a minute, that is, what is this, Interstellar? What are we in, a weird time loop because we're near a black hole? This is crazy. Topical.
How topical indeed. That was very smooth.
Thank you. Did you find it yet?
So apparently, the problem is there's the displacement, but then there's also the dry weight, and I can't find that. So the displacement of it, in the end, is 110,000 tons. So multiply 110,000 tons by 2,000 pounds in a ton, and you end up getting, $22 billion just for, rocket fuel to send each pound of this thing into space. And that's not including, sending each person to space, and not including all the water.
Food, and air, and food, and paying for upkeep, and these people's salaries, and that you constantly have to be sending that food and air up there.
Yeah, so in the end, I think your estimate of $11 trillion is probably pretty solid.
I mean, I'm no math scientist, but I think it was pretty good.
I agree that you're probably not one having said that.
So, there's not really much to go over in the middle part. Guy Pearce kills a lot of people. That's basically it. He gets the president's daughter. Oh, we got to sneak to this room. Okay, now we got to sneak to that room. Okay, now I'm going to kill a bunch of people here. At one point, this part bugged me. They sneak into a room, and this is where we went into the whole thing where he's mixing axle grease and coffee grounds into a cup. Because what he's going to do is they're going to put prisoner jumpsuits on. He's going to cut her hair and dye it black so that they can sneak past. They do this, and 30 seconds later they get found out. To the point where, why was it even in the movie if it didn't matter whether or not they did it?
Because they wanted to mess up the blonde girl's hair and it'd be a funny bit.
Oh, yeah, and at some point a negotiator comes on. He's trying to get the president's daughter out, and they find out the president's daughter's on there, and they shoot him, so now they're after her. That really doesn't matter, though.
It really doesn't. Like, the hostage negotiator is a subplot that doesn't matter. His friend that's on the space station is a subplot that doesn't matter because they find him and he dies 2 minutes later. We haven't even talked about the friend up to this point. Don't feel concerned about that. He's useless.
No, and the friend comes out, and he has space dementia, also implying that he's been there for a long time, because I feel like space dementia needs, like, several months of onset. But again, this movie feels like it takes place within 3 hours, so it's like, what, he got arrested, they threw him in a rocket ship, they put him in a cryo thing, 20 minutes later they break him out of it, and now he's retarded.
Yeah, it's really the time. There is no sense of the passage of time ever in the movie, so it's impossible to tell how long the guy's been there.
At one point, Snake... Oh, God, that wasn't even a joke. I was honestly going to call him Snake at that point. Snow sneaks through an air vent, and there's like a zero-gravity fight with some dude. I wrote, Snow sneaks through an air vent and has a zero-gravity fight. It's okay.
It's okay. So
because it is. It's just all right.
So he has to cross over a large shaft, which the pseudoscience of the movie, I believe, is supposed to intend that this is where the gravity of the station is generated. He ends up getting caught by one of the prisoners there, and they have a big fight over the giant, dangerous, spinning MacGuffin. It, shocker, ends up killing the prisoner and not Snow, because mostly for plot reasons, and that's about it.
Yeah, then Snow blows up a bunch of guys with grenades. That's okay. Then they fall through an air vent, and Snow takes her into an infirmary to stop her bleeding and says, like, 35 one-liners. He does. Like, while they're stitching her up, she's like, oh, well, you know, I'm here because prisoners, and they're kind of bonding. Well, she's bonding.
She's trying, and he is just like a robot, completely immune to any kind of human interaction. This is the part that is like the worst of him just being obnoxious quip machine. More than any other part, it really stands out as like he's not human.
So the whole plot is like he's trying to get her to this escape pod that isn't on any of the maps. They just built it without telling anybody because they thought that'd be a good idea. I don't know why. And at one point they get in a fight in like an engine room, and his map won't work because, like, I don't know, they're not close to the Wi-Fi router. I don't know why it doesn't work. And then all of a sudden they hit the International Space Station.
They plow into the International Space Station, which drives our next MacGuffin. But before we get to that, I just want to say, like, at this point during like the whole he stitches her up thing, I kept just dreading the moment where, like, in Upside Down, the writers would just decide that these two would fall in love. And I was
they do at the end, though. They do, though. I
kept dreading the moment that it would happen during Space Jail when I was actually watching the movie. Thank goodness it didn't. But like,
no, they do in Space Jail at the end.
Whatever.
What do you mean, whatever? They do. They get on a motorcycle and drive into the sunset.
Yeah, it's. God, I hate it.
I mean, fortunately,
like it's as natural as Han and Leia, where it's just an abusive relationship the entire time until finally she's just like, you know what, you've
worn me down.
You've worn me down, not won me over or suited me or anything. You've just worn me down.
But fortunately, in this movie, it is the last 10 seconds of the film. But because he has this mental disorder, she can't actually, like, speak to him. So it's like having a conversation with Siri. Like, Siri's talking back to you, but she's not really talking to you.
But she's not really listening. So if you were to make a movie about falling in love with her, you'd be really dumb.
I like when they made that already. It was called Her.
I know. I was addressing that.
But I like what you implied, where it's like Siri has the ability to love and talk to us, but she just doesn't listen.
The dumb bitch.
He just got mad for no reason.
Siri and I are going through hard times. I'm just kidding. I have an Android.
But they hit the International Space Station, which isn't supposed to be in space at that point. And also, because when is it supposed to come down? Like 2019?
The International Space Station is set to be decommissioned and deorbited in the next 10 years.
Okay, so next 10 years it's supposed to come down. This is 60 years past that point. And not only is it still up there, but if we have a giant space jail and an even larger space police department, what is the point of the International Space Station? It serves no purpose.
Right? Yeah, the entire purpose of it is like a big reach of scientific experimentation in a small facility, because that is the largest thing we could build to sustain life in space. And now we have just a giant facility full of average Joes, like, abusing prisoners.
That has created artificial gravity.
Yeah, just, like, stick a lab in there, or better yet, on the space police station.
Well, you think once those two places were finished being built,
we would know as much as we needed to about space.
Exactly. And also, like, be on the moon or anything. And so they explained that it hit the space station because it's falling out of orbit for really no reason.
Mostly a lack of maintenance by the prisoners.
But, like, there is no warning of that. Like, it shouldn't just all of a sudden start falling out of the sky.
It should not be a surprise to anyone when that happens, because the second it starts losing orbit, there should be, like, sirens everywhere going like, hey, someone needs to pay attention to this.
But it's a surprise to everybody. So they get to the escape pod, and they get to it, and there's only one seat inside. So she's like, "You're not going to come with me?" And he's like, No. He's lying to her, and he's like, "No, there's another one. I'll be on the other one." So she's like, "Oh, okay." So she sits in the space pod, and it ejects, and everyone's like, "Oh, good, it's safe." And she's like, "No, I didn't leave. I'm here to help you."
And I don't even know how she did it, because there's like
why she did it.
Did she go out the other space pod door? Like,
why did she get out? Like, there is no reason for her to not leave. She has no reason to.
The entire reason she didn't do it is because Harrison Ford didn't do it on Air Force One. I guarantee you, that is the entire reason.
But, like, it's not because she's in love with him, because, like, he doesn't. I don't even think he knows her name, really. He doesn't, like. The jail is also falling out of the sky. She knows this. So there's no, like, reason for her to be like, "Oh, we can save it," or something. Like,
we'll take the next only escape pod off of here.
Right, and that's when he goes, "Oh, there isn't one. I was lying to you." And she's like, "Oh, shit." Like,
so we're at the point where the space station's deorbiting, and so at this point we can't ignore it anymore. Like, the president and the U.S. government can't ignore it anymore. There can't be any more attempts to save the daughter. Like, the head of something, it looks like the head of the Secret Service, honestly, essentially usurps the president and is like, "You're not thinking clearly, you're worried about your daughter, but this thing is going to land probably not in America, but we're going to pretend it is anyway."
Statistically, either the oceans or Russia.
Because that is just the large, like, 70% of the Earth is the oceans and Russia.
Is Russia.
Is Russia. Because they claim the oceans. And so this shouldn't be the U.S.'s problem. If anything, they should be like, maybe it hits Russia. Maybe we get so lucky.
Maybe we take out two birds with one stone here.
But they decide, in a much safer move, to deploy the space police to go shoot it down. Now, this commences one of the dumbest scenes in the history of cinema, beaten only by the scene in the Blues Brothers where the entire Chicago Police Department crashes into itself. And you think there's no way you could even compete with that, because why would those cars keep driving into that pile of cars?
And then they all get out and shoot their guns. Like, by then they're like a mile away.
But instead, in Space Jail, that's exactly what happens. they get like 70 of these high maneuverability space cop cars, and they fly directly at the space jail, firing guns at it while its external cannons are just ripping the fleet apart. They are literally all just driving to their deaths, knowingly so. And this arises my biggest complaint in the movie. In this movie, we have seen rocket propulsion and we have seen explosives. And in this universe, no one has put those together to make a missile. They could just fire missiles at Space Jail and just blow it out of the sky, but for some reason they have to get right up close to it with these high maneuverability craft and just die.
Well, also, you said something we were talking about it the other day, where it's like, we have drones now.
We have drones now. Even if there wasn't missiles in this world, these space police things should be completely automated. Because why would you pay for the life support of 70 pilots when you could just have a robot drone army?
And not only that, we just got done telling you that the space jail is falling out of the sky. Why are they even bothering to do a plan that has already failed once, and they literally have not changed their tactics from an hour ago when they lost the first half of their space fleet? Like, if their whole plan is to bomb this thing out of the sky, just wait. It's doing it for you.
Well, their goal was to blow it out of the sky so it wouldn't fall as one giant wreck and, say, hit a building.
I don't know. That
so they were trying to. They were right. I would have watched that, but they instead try to just blow it up where it is so that only tiny pieces rain down and kill people. But this comes to one of my favorite parts of the movie, where the prisoners are aware that the space cops are going to try and blow Space Jail out of the sky. So the head of the prisoners calls the girl over and is like, "You need to tell your dad to call off this assault, or I am going to set my brother on you." And that is that is the scariest threat anyone has ever made, because that guy is insane.
The brother is the crazy person that they woke up for the interview, and this whole movie he has not been like. Not only has he not been helping, he's been like actively helping towards their death.
Towards the death of the prisoners. Of
everybody.
President's daughter, everyone. He's the definition of insane. And it is amazing. So when he's like, "I'm going to set my brother on you," it's like, oh shit, you better do what he says.
So she gets on the microphone and she goes like, she essentially says, "Don't come get me, blow this place up." And he is good to his word. He's like, "All right, my brother's going to rape you now."
Well,
and he just starts raping her. Like, well, he doesn't rape her. He starts,
like, beating her, and then the brother's like, "You know what, that's enough." And he's like, "But you just said."
"You said I could rape her, though." And he's like, "Yeah, I know, but ugh."
Yeah, but, I mean, come on. Like, not even I'm so mean as to put you... I'm not going to give you carte blanche. And so that's when Crazy Guy just ultimately gives up and stabs his much saner brother in the gut. And the whole, like... The second you find out that they're brothers, it's just another unnecessary layer, like the MacGuffin suitcase, like the space police, like everything. It's all like just...
They find out they're brothers when the one brother is dying and the other brother is going to die in like a minute and a half. So you don't even have time to let that sink in before it doesn't matter even more.
No, well, they tell you early on, like, when the main guy asserts control over the Crazy Guy, and he's like, "You think you're running this?
Right.
I am."
No, you're right.
And they're like, "Why don't you just kill that guy? He is causing nothing but problems." And he's like, "I can't. He's my brother." And it's like, yeah, but he's kind of a lost cause, man.
So at this point, the movie kind of just starts to like end. The space jail is now getting ready to blow up because the space jets managed to, in a scene that is identical to the Death Star trench run, where they go into a trench and drop a bomb into a tiny hole, and
because again, a missile couldn't have done that,
right? Or anything else really, and they could just throw rocks at it, and and they Guy Pearce and the president's daughter are like, oh, the only way to escape now is to put on these spacesuits and just open a window and jump out?
Yeah.
Because that's what they do. They just open a door and they just jump out. And instead of like, I guess because it's crashing, they're closer, but I still got pissed that they...
I'm gonna I usually try and write off like but maybe, and you stop me. I'm gonna stop you now. That is
no,
not.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
It wasn't sinking down. They jump out of a space station that's halfway to the fucking moon, and just arrive in the middle of New York.
Like, okay, when the Red Bull guy jumped out of his space balloon, he fell for like a half an hour. He fell so long you have enough time to get bored.
Yeah.
Like, these two fall out of fucking space, and they hit the ground in like 35 seconds. Like, and the last, I don't know, 30,000 feet go by in like 2 seconds. Like, they jump out of the in these spacesuits. They're just whipping through the sky like, I don't know, they got rockets on their backs or something. They, like, she passes out. Their spacesuits, like, detach from them in, like, Lego pieces. And they, like, he tries to wake her up. They get together, and then they, like, pull a parachute. Like, that's the thing. He should have plenty of time to deal with that. Like, he should be like, okay, I've got, like, 35 minutes. So I'll like, try and wake her up. Okay, she's not awakened yet. It's been 5 minutes. Okay, I'm going to try and get her on my back. All right, I'll buckle her in, and I'll release the parachute, and we'll kind of just float to the ground, and it'll be whatever. But the insane, like, tension of the scene is, like, they have less than a minute, and they're just going to, like... Also, the crater they would make would be insane.
It would be... Everything about this would be insane, and none of it was thought about by the writers. Like, just falling out of space, like, the amount of... Because the thing is, like, the Red Bull guy, when he jumped out of space, he didn't have to deal with as much heat in re-entry because he was just jumping off of a platform from a balloon. When you're in orbit, you're going so fast that even though you're falling, you're going forward so fast that when you fall, you miss the Earth. And so, like, they're going that fast forward, that fast down. These people should be white hot, and they're just in tiny little engineering suits.
But, like, that's the other stupid thing about this movie, where it's just like, oh, that's just what it'll just happen this way. They fall in, like, Washington, D.C. Like, they land next to the White House, and there are already cops there waiting for them, and they arrest Snow immediately.
Because he totally didn't do what they sent him up there to do.
Right, exactly. And, like we said before, they should crash into Russia or the ocean and die by getting eaten by Russian cannibals or something, or sharks, or just die from hitting, like, just crashing into the earth. He should pull that ripcord on his parachute, and it should just rip away.
And he should just die.
And they should. This is impossible.
The deceleration should just kill him.
Like, okay, let's say it is some sort of super parachute that will stop them and just slowly drop them to the ground.
So you're right. For a high altitude one, they have like multi-stage parachutes, but yeah.
Right. At the rate they but not in this movie though. It's just a standard parachute that stops them.
Yeah.
Like, and you're right. At the rate in this movie, at the rate they decelerate, their like organs should just rocket out of their assholes. And their skeletons should be crushed to their feet because they go from going like 80,000 miles an hour to like 13 in a second. Like their brains should be in their asses. Like it's insane.
And so let's wrap up the plot as quickly as they did.
That's it. They crash down. The subplot where he was framed sort of just fixes itself. He gets out. He gets Microchip MacGuffin, which is almost like the adventures of Snow. The cool guy are not over. And he walks out of the ground jail, and old time jail. And he sees the president's daughter, and she's like, they have like flirty lines, and now she, because I think it's contagious, I think she caught his disease, and she's now kind of speaking in pithy one-liners. Where she's like, oh, I thought you were such a tough guy. Didn't know your first name was Marion. And he's like, oh, well, I didn't realize you were such a bitch, or whatever he says. And then they get on a space motorcycle. And then they get on a motorcycle and just drive into the sunset. And you're like, and the movie ends so quickly. Like, there's like, between when they hit the Earth and when they drive away, it's like a minute and a half. And they end and you're like, whoa, wait a second, what? Like, it's so fast. They just wrap everything up so fast because they're like, you probably didn't care about this. We really don't either. And here's the credits. You're just like, oh my God.
I didn't care about it. I cared about it even less than they pretended I cared about it.
And then that was Lockout, a.k.a. Space Jail.
God, we didn't even talk about the movie, which is just fine. It was so dumb. Like, it was amazing to watch. I didn't hate it in the wrong way. Like, I enjoyed it, but I hated it.
Well, that was the thing. Like, this was I guess we're going into reviews and ratings right now.
Yep.
I love this movie because it's not good. Like, it is so stupid. Not down to, like, obviously what they say, but every aspect of it, where it's set, why it's set there, what is happening, how the things that are happening, is like what is happening directly in front of you, and also what happens when you start to think about why these things are happening. Nothing is good. Guy Pearce's character is so dumb. Just a stupid. He's so dumb. It's the dumbest movie. But with that said, it's so fun. It is such a fun, stupid movie to look at.
Yeah, it's a cartoon.
It is. It's a live-action cartoon, and sometimes it's not even live-action. I mean, I love it. It's a perfect good-bad movie. I give it good-bad. Go watch it. It was on Netflix for a while. It's not on now. I know Netflix is always just putting up movies to, like, fill it. Eventually, it'll be back on there. If you ever see it, watch it. It's good. In a bad way. And what do you got to say? Well, I guess you already do you have anything else you wanted to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing I can say that I haven't already said or that, like, anyone would even care about, because, like, this movie wasn't made to stand up to criticism. It wasn't. It wasn't made with any future criticism in mind. It was
barely made.
Exactly. It was just made to spew out garbage and be dumb, and that's exactly what it did. So, yeah, we could make fun of it all we want, and, like, if the makers of the movie listened to all of it, they'd go, yeah, how about that? And,
like, be like, yeah, we know.
And just continue on with their lives, and that would be that. And so, yeah.
Well, with that out of the way, do you want to go into movie suggestions for a movie we actually liked? It doesn't have to be the genre or related to this film in any way.
I am going to do it related to this movie because, so for a extraction movie where one man is sent on a dangerous mission, I am going to suggest Rambo 2.
Oh, went a different way. I like it.
Right? You're in the jungles of Vietnam. You have a very interesting character who has proven to have some depth. Even though people write off Sylvester Stallone, I think his characters end up having more depth than people give him credit for.
I agree.
So yeah, Rambo 2. You'll still watch people explode. You'll still hear some one-liners. You'll get some great shit and some hot Asian sex that ends with the love interest immediately being killed, like should always happen in movies.
I think I want to give two suggestions. I want to give one suggestion that is for both of us. If you think this movie is stupid, just watch Escape from New York. It is the same exact movie, but done way better and less stupid. Even though,
but still a little stupid.
It's still stupid. When you think about the two premises, you're like, okay, that's stupid too. But like when you watch Space Jail, you're like, well, Escape from New York is stupid. Space Jail is dumb. Like it's it's just like, you know what I mean? Does that make sense? Like
yeah.
It's just dumb. Like you're like, I honestly think the main character might be dumb, like a dumb person,
or just physically broken in some way in his brain.
And even though, like, it's Snake Plissken, they do such an 80s way of making him cool. That's the main character from Escape from New York. where he's just like, ooh, he smokes and he's got an eye patch and he's got a snake tattoo. Like,
and you could do that in the 80s.
Right. Not only could you get away with that, now it's sort of cliched and dumb, but it works so much better. And also, Snake keeps his goddamn mouth shut. He barely fucking talks. He says like 7 things in the movie, but everything he says is either cool or important. This guy never shuts up, and nothing he says matters.
Not at all.
Nothing. Not a goddamn word of it. Anyway, we're done talking about Space Jail. But my real movie suggestion for Just For Me, it's on Netflix right now. It was just put up at the beginning of this month, so it should be on there for a while. I told you a little bit about this. Yeah. It's called Snowpiercer. It stars, who's Captain America? Chris Evans.
There you go.
It stars Chris Evans, and it is a dystopian movie set in the future where global warming, blah, 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 Earth is now the Ice Age, and the last remaining humans are living on a giant train that encircles the Earth and never stops moving because of blah, 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 perpetual motion engine, ? And...
Oh my gosh.
But that what I just said has nothing to do with the plot of the movie at all. The people in the front of the plane are first class. They live in luxury. They eat real food. They never work a day in their lives. And the people in the back of the train are like dirty. They live in like grime and axle grease, and they're fed like rations of like these like bricks of protein that is just like a jelly that they eat. And they're always kept down, and they're like they steal their children from them. I'm not going to tell you why, but they steal their children all the time.
To eat.
And at some point, the people in the back of the train have to revert to cannibalism. And so Chris Evans is like, we're going to stage a revolution. And so they go car by car, and they slowly take over the train, and it is awesome. There are awesome gunfights. There are awesome fight scenes. There's just these really interesting characters, and the movie is really good.
Really?
Dumb as the seriously, as dumb as the premise is, that's how good the movie is. So if that means anything to you,
I suppose I'll have to watch it this weekend.
I really suggest it. Not as like a, I'm hungover movie, or, I'm killing time, or my girlfriend's getting ready. It's like, legitimately watch this movie. I really liked it, and I think more people should watch it and know about it. Also, it's a foreign film. It's a Korean movie.
Why not?
Why not? Because apparently all the movies we watch are fucking foreign films. But plugs. If you have questions, comments, concerns, or hate mail, we love hate mail, you can email us at moviehotdog@gmail.com. You can follow us on Twitter at moviehotdog, or you can go to our Facebook page at This Movie Was a Hot Dog. That is all I had. Matthew, did you have anything you would like to say?
There's only one thing left to say.
This movie was a hot dog.